Hello, and welcome to another day of English 2. I'm your online teacher, Miss Abear. Today, we are starting a new unit, but it's actually a continuation of our Coming of Age unit from Common Lit. With this second part, you are going to be asked to write a literary analysis. Again, all of these resources can be found on Common Lit's website, and so your teacher who's in your classroom can help you find those things that they need in the resources for that. So our essential question for this unit is, what experiences lead us from childhood into adulthood? And one of the things that you guys just wrote was a personal narrative looking at some of the ways that you have grown as a person and how you have grown out of childhood and into adulthood. Although you may or may not be considered an adult yet, depending on who it is that you ask. Today, we are going to review some of the texts that we read during the last unit. So I hope that you held on to those texts because they're going to be important when we write this literary analysis at the end. So if you'll follow along with me on this slide, it says, write an essay in which you explain your perspective on what it means to come of age and how we become an adult. Use evidence from multiple texts and your own experiences to support your argument. So what I want you to focus on for a second is that very last word that says argument. A literary analysis is an argument. Now, there is a different genre of writing that is specifically an argument, and it's typically more non-fictional texts, so you're basically supporting a position. But for a literary analysis, you're mainly looking at some fiction texts as well as some nonfiction texts, and you're arguing your thesis. And so while it is a literary analysis, it's also an argument. So those kind of go side by side. So let's go ahead and review our text. This is a list of the text from this entire unit. We have Safety of Numbers by Lucy Tan, Growing Up Key Moments by Jessie McBurney, Through the Tunnel by Doris Lessing, John F. Kennedy Inspired Us Then and Now, American History by Judith Ortiz-Cofer, Eraser Tattoo by Jason Reynolds, and Marigolds by Eugenia Collier. Now, what I want you to look at are the different genres for these different texts. You see short stories, informational, and you also see a letter, or letters is what that was. And then on that last section, you see, as you read, think about. Well, when you are looking at that other section, that as you read, think about, that is the writer of this curriculum. That's their way of saying, pay special attention to what the authors are doing in these texts. Because when you pay special attention to what these authors are doing, they're giving you ideas for your thematic end of the unit essay that you're going to be writing. It also gives you a hint as far as the theme for that essay or for that text. So let's look at some of the texts that we read last unit, and then we'll look at these others further down in this week and some next week. So the first text that we read was Safety in Numbers. If you remember, in that short story, the narrator's rebellious streak clashes with her overbearing mother. And although the narrator is compliant and goes along with some things, in the end, she makes a really bold decision about how she wants to live her life. And that's important when you're thinking about growing from childhood into adulthood, because you begin making decisions on your own and kind of pulling away from the parental advice and those sorts of things. Next, you had Growing Up Key Moments. This was an informational text that explored the pivotal events that contribute to our coming of age, such as realizing that the adults in our lives are not perfect and experiencing our first heartbreak. So this particular author wrote this incredible memoir or informational text, and it was very specific about how she grew from experiences of her childhood and some others. So the next text that we read was Through the Tunnel. Guys, I think this was most people's favorite. So this very suspenseful short story described one boy's quest to follow the lead of a group of older boys and swim through a tight underwater tunnel. And what seemed like a small physical task ended up being the accelerant that pushes him to gain independence and a new self-awareness. This text really helped you guys delve into the idea of how authors build suspense. It also looked at some other ideas that you could have for writing your essay at the end. The last text that we read was John F. Kennedy Inspired Us Then and Now. And this was an assortment of letters written to the editor of the Washington Post from people who were young at the time that President John F. Kennedy's death. And they reflected on the impact that moment in history had on their lives. Now, this text was designed to build background knowledge for American history, and that is a short story that we will begin reading tomorrow. So I can't forget our very first unit, which was our signpost, and I don't want you to forget those either. So remember, when you are reading any literary text, fiction text, you want to look for those contrasts and contradictions. You want to look for those aha moments. You want to look for those things that happen again and again, those symbols, those scenes, those words that keep appearing. You want to look at those tough questions. You want to identify those memory moments, and you want to identify those words for the wiser. Remember that all of those signposts are designed to help you identify the theme, help you understand the plot, help you understand the conflict of the story that you are reading. So make sure that you continue using those signposts in all of your reading. That is all that we have for today. Before I get you off though, I want you to know that there are some additional pieces of this Common Lit unit that your teacher who is in your classroom might use to help advance your own essay at the end. But until next time, happy reading.